Our next speaker will be Owen Power. I will read your bio. So Owen Power is a seasoned financial professional and strategic leader with several decades of distinguished experience in public accounting, business consulting, and private industry. As a certified public accountant, CPA, and a South African chartered accountant, SA, letters, Owen brings a wealth of expertise to the table, specializing in guiding founders towards business growth and successful exits. Owen has held pivotal roles in both financial and executive capacities, showcasing his versatility and acumen. Notably, he served as the Chief Financial Officer and subsequently the Chief Executive Officer of a rapidly expanding medium-sized company. His strategic financial leadership played a pivotal role in the company's successful sale to a private equity firm, a testament to his ability to navigate complex business landscapes. As a senior finance guru and vice president of finance and operations for a dynamic tech startup, Owen was instrumental in steering the company through its growth phase and eventual sale. His keen insights into financial operations and strategic planning were critical in ensuring the startup's success. Outside the boardroom, Owen is a mentor with American Corporate Partners, a nonprofit that supports military veterans transition into a post-service career. Owen is also a dedicated advocate for the youth rugby development, having served as the president of Utah Youth Rugby and as a board member of USA Youth and High School Rugby for several years. He has contributed significantly to the growth and promotion of the sport at the grassroots level. Owen Power continues to be a driving force in the world of finance, leveraging his extensive background to provide invaluable insights and guidance to businesses aiming for sustainable growth and successful exits. Everyone give it up for Owen.
Thank you. All that bio says is that I'm old. Imagine this. Has been very successful, but in the prior decade have really suffered. Revenues have gone down, margins have gone down, the company was starting to struggle with cash flows. The founder gathered together his team to try and chart a new course. Where do we go from here? The company had made a loss a couple of years before, and the team had managed to get it back to a small, profitable situation. But it wasn't enough. The founder felt that his legacy needed to grow. And how were we going to take this company now and make it grow again? There's a story that's told of a girl named Alice. And she comes upon a fork in the road. And she sees a cat sitting there and says, "Would you tell me, please, which way I ought to go from here?" The smiling cat replied, "That depends a good deal on where you want to get to." Alice thought about it for a minute and said, "I don't much care where." Whereupon the cat replied, "Then it doesn't matter which way you go." In that conference room, the founder laid out his vision, where he wanted the company to be. In just 3 years' time, he wanted a revenue of $25 million and net profit of 10% of it, or $2.5 million. The leadership team looked at him and just shook their heads. That's crazy. We would have to grow the revenues of this company by at least 50% just to get anywhere near that number. We don't think we can do it. But the founder said, "That's my vision. That's what I want." He began with the end in mind. I'm going to share some numbers, which have now kind of arrived. I'm going to share with you some numbers that are not in your financial statements, but that can make a very big difference in helping you get to where it is that you want to be. I'm going to refer to these as key performance indicators, or KPIs for short. Now, these are just kind of the vanilla evergreen ones, the ones that every business should be looking at. But there are dozens, if not hundreds more, that business owners can identify and find that will help them drive the growth inside of their company. Let's start with these. Revenue per employee. Gosh, this thing is so expensive. Revenue per employee. So this company that I've mentioned before, we had started looking at this as one of the indicators as we were trying to understand how do we get to that $25 million level. We made the calculation and determined that we were right around 200,000 per employee. And the way that we did that is we took the last 12 months sales or revenue and we divided it by the average number of employees that we had. That's the calculation. We got to 200,000. That gave us an idea of where we were at. But the question is, where did we need to get to? And we agreed that probably around 250,000 is where we needed to be. And so we started to put in place a plan that would help us get there. That meant growing sales and allowing our team to grow with those sales, but in a measured and a controlled way. So this KPI really helps us assess the productivity of the team and if we're using those resources wisely and if we're scaling appropriately. One of the things we learned as we moved along is that later on, after several years, we suddenly realized that our revenue per employee was declining. And we had to take a step back and understand what had happened. Our growth had started to happen really quickly, almost like a rocket ship just taking off. And with that, we started to hire and hire and hire. But before long, the economy started to change on us. And sales growth started to slow down, but we kept hiring. And the more we hired, the lower that revenue per employee. And once we realized that it had gotten to a level that was too low and not sustainable, it was a little late. We hadn't paid attention closely enough to that particular KPI. And we were in a little bit of cash flow difficulty, and suddenly we had to make some significant reductions in force. If we had been tracking that more carefully, we would have slowed down the hiring, perhaps even stopped, and maybe even, if necessary, done a smaller reduction in force. But instead, we had to make some significant cuts. So when your RPE is declining, it may be that you need to cut your force, but maybe it also means you need to invest more in the team and in the systems that you have that we mentioned before to be able to grow your sales better. So it's a good indicator to understand where you're at. Gross profit percentage. This one is the vanilla one that everyone knows, right? It's sales, less your cost of sales, giving you gross profit. But what is that percentage? If you take the gross profit amount and divide it by your revenue, you arrive at that percentage. Maybe it's 30%. That sounds pretty cool, right? But maybe 30% is not enough. Maybe it's just right. But one of the key things about any of these KPIs is that seeing the number once is not enough. You need to track it. You need to understand how it's shifting and changing month over month, year over year. Before I started at this manufacturing company, they had started to go through a decade of declining revenue and declining margins. When I arrived, they had actually found that they were in a situation of making a loss for the first time in their 30-year history. So I started to do a deep dive analysis on the financials and the information that was available, and discovered, to my horror, that the margin that they thought they had was actually incorrect, and the real number was much lower than what they thought it was. The reason was some of the accounting was off, and not all of the costs would be properly accounted for in the right place. Very bad. Yes, the controller lost their job, but that's a different story. What was more important, though, is that the sales team did not know truly what the cost of the product was that we were manufacturing. So as they would go to market and they would sell at a particular price, thinking they were getting, say, a 30% margin, they were actually only selling at a 15% or less margin. And that had been happening for years over years over years. So what did we do? Once we understood what that was, We did a number of things, including negotiating with our suppliers for better rates, making other improvements within the building. More importantly, we gave the right information to the sales team that allowed them to quote at the right prices. They went into market, increased their pricing into the marketplace, we increased our sales and profitability with it. If the company had done the work and they could see the analysis showing them the decline, if they had done the work to understand what was driving that, then they could have saved their company a lot of heartache for several years. Net income percentage. You can tell I've gone from the top of the P&L down to the bottom. This is the number that most owners of businesses are really very interested in. Probably because they're going to have to pay taxes on that one. So that's the one that worries them the most. But it's also the one that tells them how much they've made, what it is that they've earned. And the percentage is simply taking that net income and again dividing by the revenue and arriving at that. And in my experience, a 5 to 10% range is typically pretty good for most businesses. Some will naturally be higher, some could even be lower. Take a Walmart, for instance. Super high volume of sales, but their net income percentage is actually very, very low because they work at very low margins. But when you're selling billions and billions and billions of dollars, that 1 or 2% actually adds up to a lot. This is important because this is where the rubber hits the road. This is really where the cash flow into your business is coming from. And so if that number is starting to get low, you might want to dig into the expense structure of your company and identify places for change. However, I learned from sad experience that cost cutting is not the only way to success in improving that number. There's really 3 things. Think of it as a 3-legged stool. 1, yes, you may need to reduce costs. Think about, as we spoke about the tech world, think about all of those subscriptions for all of those software applications that you have. Do you really need all of them? Do you really need 20 seats when there's only 5 employees? Do you really need to have 2 systems? The company I'm working with right now has identified that they have 2 CRM systems operating in parallel with each other. They'll be combining those. The current estimates are they'll save around $60,000 in the first year just by doing that. So cost cutting is important. But related to that, getting a handle on what our direct costs are. So if you're buying and selling a product, are you getting the best price from your suppliers? If you're manufacturing a product, are your operations inside of the production factory, are they efficient? And there's a number of KPIs that we can go into there. And then third and finally is sales. That's always going to be the fastest way to dig out of a hole is to grow sales. Without those 3 working in tandem, it's very, very difficult to dig out. Now, it would be remiss if I wasn't at an event sponsored by a company called Big Red Jelly that I don't talk about some kind of marketing KPIs. And there's 2 that I think that are very useful, and most companies use them, and it's really one that everyone should use. The first is customer acquisition cost. How much does it cost me to get that new customer? So a simple example, if I spend $100 on Google Ads and I get 2 new customers as a result, my customer acquisition cost is going to be $50 a customer, which is great, but if those 2 customers only spend $10 each with you, that's kind of a very bad return on investment. So understanding what that number is going to be a big driver as to where you're going to be investing your money. And clearly, if that customer acquisition cost is very high, you may be spending too much on your marketing, but you may also, as we learned from the speaker, you may just be targeting the wrong audience. And so, little plug for Big Jed really, if you use them, they'll be able to help you figure that out. Right, Josh? The related one then is the customer lifetime value. So the idea is we want a customer to come back, and back, and back, and back again, right? And the software companies eventually figured that out. They didn't have to just sell you a box of software once and hope you would come back and get the upgrade. They just make you pay for it every month now. And then they send you upgrades whether you like it or not. But over a period of time, that customer value or lifetime value really does extend. Now, not all businesses are like that, but I can tell you that I love a company called Fair Harbor, and they get me every time. I get a little text just when I'm thinking about it, I get a little email when I'm not thinking about it, and I spend way too much money with them. So my customer lifetime value for them is pretty high. So going back to the Google Ads, if that $50 customer that you've paid to acquire that customer keeps coming back and keeps buying $10, $10, $10, $10 every day for the next 10 years, then the $50 to acquire them is probably well worth it. So financial statements are essential. And if you don't already have a system or a process whereby you get a set of financial statements within 10 months of the 10 days after the end of month end, you really should invest the time and the money and the resources to get that. Those financials tell you where you're at. With those, setting yourself a goal for at least 10 years out, and then break it down into a 3 and a 1 year goal, helps you understand what that pathway is, what that road is that you're going to be taking. The key performance indicators help you understand whether or not you're on track. Think about it as the dashboard in your car, the gas indicator, the oil, the temperature, the mileage, all of those kind of things are there to tell you how the car is performing and how you can be doing. Those are the KPIs within your business. And as you start to determine that, those are the numbers that you need to hit your destination. These are the numbers that help you steer, not just reflect about your business. Going back to that conference room in Riverside Country Club, as we all walked out that room, we were just shaking our heads. We don't think we can do this. That's just too much. But we sat down, put together the KPIs that we needed, and all of these that I've showed you are ones that we used, plus others, and started to track them every week. Looking 13 weeks back, every week, how are we doing? What do we need to do to improve? In the end, 1 year early, we hit the 25 million revenue and the $2.5 million in net income. A couple of years after that, we took that company to the market and sold it to a private equity firm with 70% premium on what we originally expected we would get. These things work, they can work for you. Use them and you'll ignite your growth. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, I do have one. Where's up?
Just in working with small businesses, we're kind of putting them on the hot seat. What are some of the classic pitfalls that you see? Networking with people, hear a lot of startup founders and what have you when it comes to those KPIs. What are some of the classic pitfalls that you see with startup founders?
So the first is that they run the business based on how much cash is sitting in the bank. And I won't ask for a show of hands, but I would expect the majority probably say that that's the way to do it. Which is why I said if you don't have financials every single month, you're already behind. Because then you're just literally putting out fires all the time. The second is not having a vision. Not actually saying, this is where I want to be in the future. This is the end goal, this is where it wants to be at. And there's lots of really great tools and techniques that you can use that will help you be able to set that. The one that I've used successfully at this company that I was referencing to is OKRs, Objectives and Key Results. It's a great foundational system to be able to help you set appropriate goals. There's a whole system that's related to it that helps you track those and helps you monitor those as you go. Another shout out, perhaps for Josh, he had introduced me to the book called Traction. Another great system for running businesses and really implemented that as well. So I would say those two are probably.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you so much. Here, one more hand.